Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible Study Live with Connie and friends, Connie and sisters. So I'm excited that tonight for our October, I don't even know what month we're in. For our October theme, we're doing siblings in the Bible. I think I typed September somewhere, but our October theme is favorite siblings in the Bible. And as she is, I will just say, one of my favorite siblings, so as not to offend any others. It is apropos that my sibling, my sweet sister Gina, lead tonight. So without further ado, I am going to spotlight her for everyone and let her take it away for Bible Study Live with Connie and sisters and siblings. So thank you, Gina, for being here. I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too, little sister. So today, on this theme, favorite siblings in the Bible, I looked at some of the siblings listed in the Bible to try to figure out who are my favorites. And of course, we know about Cain and Abel, right? Not instructive. Jacob and Esau, another set of siblings. Yeah, nope. Joseph and his brothers, and we've talked about Joseph and his brothers a number of times. You've probably mentioned that he had 11 of them. 11 of them. Anyway, again, not the set of siblings that I would emulate, even though Joseph ultimately came through. He was a good guy for his sibs, even though they weren't good for him. And then there's Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And when I looked at them and kind of looked into their story, one of the things I read said, this is, sometimes they say that your sibling you have to be best friends with your siblings, but that's not always the case, right? So Mary and Martha probably were not besties. They were so different from one another that they still hung like wet clothes, right? Like they right to the end. But I will tell you, in looking at siblings, the story that I wasn't really familiar with that resonated with me was the story of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. And I had heard a little bit about Miriam just as when she was a little girl, but I hadn't understood her whole story. So my title today is Miriam, a Big Sister Story. Miriam was the oldest child of the three. And then came Aaron, then came Moses. So the first time we really hear about Miriam, some stories don't even mention her name, but her name is mentioned in the NIV. And it's the story of when Moses was born. He was born, and at the time, Pharaoh had decided that all male children born to Israelites needed to be killed. And so Moses is born. At the time, Aaron is about 3 years old, so he missed the window. And Moses's mom hides him, right? She gives birth and she hides him for 3 months until she can't hide him anymore. So we're going to we'll take a look at that story in the Bible. This is Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Let me put my eyeballs on. Okay. And it says, now a man of the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. And you can kind of imagine, right, that she was like, okay, keep an eye out for your brother. Miriam was the oldest. They think she was 5 or 6 years old when this happened. She wasn't older, but she was old enough to understand what was going on. And so mom was like, all right, this is what we have to do with your brother. I got to put him in the thing. I need you to keep an eye out. So she did. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. I don't know how, well, other than circumcision, I guess that's how they made it. That was a Hebrew baby. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. And the girl went and got her mom, basically, went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. So your first introduction to Miriam is the ultimate big sister, right? Like she's looking out for her baby brother. And when the Pharaoh's daughter finds him, she's slick, right? She's like, oh, look, he's hungry. You want me to, I can go get, a Israelite or a Hebrew woman to nurse him. And she goes and gets her own mom, who probably nursed him half an hour earlier. And so already we see that we don't know that Miriam's mom told her that part. They don't tell you that Miriam's mom said, here's what you need to do. But Miriam, whether she knew to do it from her mom or whether she came up with it on her own, she was all about it and she was taking care of business. So she was a fantastic big sister from the beginning. So what I saw in this relationship between Miriam and Moses and Aaron was that Moses was clearly God's chosen. But Miriam played a role and Aaron played a role. And so Aaron ended up playing the role as Moses's mouthpiece. So when God called Moses to lead his people out of Egypt, Moses was like, whoa, I can't even speak right. And he said, well, go get your brother Aaron, man. He's on his way here. Let him speak. I'll talk to you and you talk to him and he'll talk to the people. So that is in Exodus chapter 4, verses 14 through 17. God was not happy, right? God was like, I chose you. And, Connie has talked about this before in Bible study, that in our human frailty, we're like, but I don't know. And God is like, but I know, right? But I know. So God, it says in Exodus chapter 4, we'll say 13, Moses said, oh Lord, please send someone else to do it. In chapter 14, then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. And he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and his heart will be glad when he sees you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take the staff in your hand so you can perform miraculous signs with it. So like I said, what struck me was that Moses was the chosen, but both his sister and his brother were also chosen. And we see that as when Moses goes to lead his people out, that their role becomes even more prominent. When Moses starts to lead his people out, they refer to Miriam at that point as the prophetess. And what I read was that is the first time that a woman is referred to as a prophetess in the Bible. I mean, it's only Exodus, so we're pretty early in the Bible, but she that's Holly. So Moses is doing the thing with the water and the staff and parting the seas. Aaron is probably telling people what he's going to do and where to go, because Moses, doesn't want to talk. And then Miriam is leading the women out. So that is in Exodus 15, chapters 19 through 21. And it says, when Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, which is interesting how they pick one, not the other. She's Aaron's sister right now, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. And Miriam sang to them, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. So the fact that they call her a prophetess makes me think that she's speaking, that God is speaking to her as well, and she's speaking to the people. So you've kind of got this interesting DeBarge, set of family members where all of them are gifted. God is speaking to all of them, and they're all helping Moses to lead. And this seems like it would work out, but not long after that, it leads to conflict. Miriam and Aaron, so Moses is married to Zipporah, the Cushite, I believe. She might be a Cushite. And something happens, and I don't know if it's Zipporah. I've read a few things. I can't tell if it's Zipporah or if it's another wife that he has, that Miriam is not happy. Something about the marriage, Miriam is not happy about that. And different sources say different things. And it's kind of fascinating. So let me read what the Bible says about it. But what happens is Miriam and Aaron start talking mess about Moses and his marriage. And they're talking about him, I think, in the temple, and disparaging his leadership. So God, of course, is having none of it. So even though Miriam's his girl, the same way he got mad at Moses when Moses didn't trust his judgment, he is not happy with Miriam or Aaron. And I love this because it says Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And here's where the pride comes in, right? Like they've been chosen to help Moses. Moses is the Lord's guy. It's almost like, don't forget why you're here, right? What you're supposed to be doing. You're an assist. God did not choose either one of them to lead, but he spoke through them. So you start smelling yourself a little bit. So they said, and then the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man. At once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out to the tent of meeting, all three of you. He's like the dad. Listen, everybody out. Everybody out. Then the Lord, so the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud. He stood at the entrance to the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When both of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. When a prophet of the Lord is among you, I reveal myself to him in visions. I speak to him in dreams, but this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him, I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He's like, I didn't stutter. Whatever I told him to do, he's not unclear on it. I didn't give him mysteries to figure out. I told him face to face what I wanted him to do. And he says, he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? The anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left them. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, there stood Miriam leprous. So the leprous, it says in the notes, it doesn't necessarily mean leprosy, but it was some skin condition like that, like snow. Aaron turned toward her and saw that she had leprosy, and he said to Moses, please, my Lord, do not hold against us the sin we have so foolishly committed. Do not let her be like a stillborn infant coming from its mother's womb with its flesh eaten half eaten away. So Moses cried out to the Lord, "Oh God, please heal her." The Lord replied to Moses, "If her father had spit in her face, would she not have been in disgrace for 7 days? Confine her outside the camp for 7 days. After that, she can be brought back." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not move on until she was brought back. She still had that leadership position. They weren't going to leave her. And after that, the people left Hazeroth and encamped in the desert of Paran. So interesting. I was trying to understand what happened, right, to make Miriam decide a couple of things. What happened to make her decide that she was mad at Moses to disparage his leadership? And there is a book, there is a series of books called the Midrash, Midrash. And I had to look up what a Midrash is, but it's a deep dive study of the Old Testament. And these books are kind of supplemental to the Old Testament. I'm assuming, I don't think it's a Jewish book, but it might have been Jewish scholars as well. But they did say that that's supplemental to the Bible, not to the Torah. So it says, the Midrash explains the entire story as follows. It became known to Miriam and Aaron that Moses had separated from intimacy with his wife Zipporah. They disapproved of this separation because they considered her to be outstandingly righteous, much as dark-skinned persons stand out among light-skinned people. Hence the reference to Zipporah as a Cushite. So we don't know. So it says the usage of the word Cushite is non-pejorative and is often used in Jewish sources as a term for someone unique and outstanding. So it might not have been that she was a Cushite was the issue. That might have just been a description of her in the Bible. Their complaint, therefore, was not about the union between Moses and Zipporah, but about their separation. The only justification they could find for Moses' celibacy was in order to maintain his prophetic state. This explains their claim that God spoke not only to Moses, but also to them, yet they had not separated from their spouses. So that, who knows? This is one explanation of why all of a sudden they had a problem. Or, and I'm assuming, we can only surmise, but Miriam probably was cool with Zipporah. She had been her sister-in-law for a long time. She probably felt like, why are you dissing my girl? So, but God rebuked them by calling them all out suddenly. And the way it's written in the Midrash is, God says, "I myself ordered him to abstain from conjugal life, and the word he received was revealed to him clearly and not in dark speeches. He saw the divine presence from behind when it passed by him. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against a man like Moses, who is moreover my servant? Your censure is directed to me rather than to him. For the receiver is no better than the thief, and if Moses is not worthy of his calling, I, as the master, deserve censure." So basically, you're not questioning him, you're questioning me. And I wondered why Miriam got the harsh treatment and Aaron didn't. They both questioned, but Miriam didn't say anything. When, Aaron was the first one to say, "Whoa, sorry, my bad, this was a terrible idea." But it doesn't ever say that Miriam said, "You know what, I was wrong." And it just doesn't show that. And she was also the big sister. So some things say that she was the instigator and she, Aaron was just like, "Okay, you're probably right. Moses shouldn't be doing the thing." So that was fascinating. So God made her stay outside for 7 days. And then some sources say she was healed and she could come back in, and others say that she was never completely healed and that she never spoke again. So not sure which one that is. So then the next time we hear about Miriam is just before her death. So she has wandered out in the wilderness with Moses and his people all this time. And when she dies, something interesting happens. This is Numbers chapter 20, verse 1. And it says, in the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh, where Miriam died and was buried. It's actually verse 2 as well. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. So I wondered what happened with the water. And this midrash, this book, said that Miriam's death is described in Numbers 20, verse 1. And in the next verse, the Israelites are described as complaining of a lack of water at Kadesh. The text reads, Miriam died there and was buried there, and there was no water for the congregation. In Jewish folk religious tradition, this abrupt transition between her passing and the lack of water was explained by postulating a well of Miriam that dried up when she died. Further elaboration identified the rock that Moses struck to bring forth water in Exodus with this well, and it was said that the rock traveled with the people until Miriam's death. The Talmud says, one of the Jewish books about the Old Testament, says 3 great leaders led Israel: Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. In their merit, they received 3 great gifts: the well for Miriam, the clouds of glory for Aaron, and the manna for Moses. When Miriam died, the well was removed, as is evidenced by the fact that immediately after the verse, and Miriam died, there was no water for the community. So I found that, and then of course we know that if you continue reading Exodus, you know that God was like, go hit the rock, go speak over the rock and get more water for your people. But I found Miriam fascinating. I found her to be an extremely, a protective big sister, but also a fallible person, and like so many in the Bible, and prone to, certainly susceptible to pride and damaging the sibling relationship by a lack of faith. She knew Moses. She knew what kind of person Moses was. And so her lack of faith in Moses, her lack of going to Moses directly when she questioned his behavior, it was a lapse. But whatever her lapse was, she was still revered as a leader and a prophetess. And her brothers loved her enough, even when she messed up, to immediately ask God to heal her and take care of her. So I had not really delved into Miriam's story, and I, as a big sister myself, who doesn't always get it right, I found it to be compelling and fascinating. So.
Thank you so much, sister. Thank you so much. That was such a good study. You know, of course, I know the story in Numbers where Miriam and Aaron opposed Moses, and this spring mentioned in the chat. They say Cushite in NIV, they say Ethiopian in King James. So, and it's often taught because of the color. You're talking about her because she's a Black woman. Why are you with that Black woman? I've heard it taught that way many times. But even though I know the story, like you said, about Moses as a baby, I never put it together that it was Miriam who was watching out for him and then saying, you know, I know a Hebrew woman who could nurse him for you. I never put, even though it says sister, I never put it together that it was Miriam. That was the sister. And I never noticed, like you mentioned, in Exodus 15, verses 19 through 21, when they referred to her as a prophetess. I'd not noticed that either, and that's really powerful as well. And you're right. They were a trinity. They did it together. Moses was the one who was called and chosen, but he could not have done it without Aaron speaking with and for him, and without Miriam leading the women and doing all that she did. And it was really good. Miriam, a big sister story. I really liked it.
But you can't forget who the lead is, and it's not just because you're the oldest. doesn't mean that you're going to be the one. So, I mean, Joseph, he was the baby, right? Right. So often God,
The one before the last.
he was
They
one
had one after.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. His mother died giving birth to his little brother.
Oh, that's right. I remember he wanted to see his little brother. Yes, I remember. Yeah, but it's just
yeah, just because you're the oldest. I mean, even David being selected as king, they paraded all the older brothers in front of, in front of Samuel. They were like, nope, nope, not them, nope, not him. And don't you have somebody else? And it was David, who was the younger one. So you're right. There is something to that. That there's a covering, though, like you said, that older sibling still provides. It's not as though their role is minimized. They have a role to play. They have a purpose as well, and they're part of the fulfillment of God's will. And in the stories that we talked about, I don't think that's the case with everybody, but I think in this story about Moses, clearly. So I'd not ever, like I said, I was familiar with his mother getting to nurse him and had never really stopped to read that particular scripture about it being his sister that followed to see where he ended up, see who got him, and then to offer a Hebrew woman. I never put that together, and I love that kind of covering. It was beautiful. Spring and Karen, welcome. Sisters, big sister sistering, yeah. Spring and Karen, do you want to unmute yourselves and share anything?
Sure. That was really good, Gina. Good job.
Thank you, Spring.
Yeah. No, I think I made a couple of notes just that in the part where they said something, they mentioned Aaron and not Miriam, that's kind of a Bible thing because Aaron was the older brother, right? So that's why he would get mentioned, even if she was doing most of the work, he would get mentioned. And also you had asked a question, you said, you're not so sure if they had, like, maybe if the mom had really planned that out, or just because we can tell all three were called. They were all three called, which has been the theme of my day, is God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And I was thinking about Moses. Moses must have had an awful stutter. He must have really had some severe speech impediment, because he even was telling his big brother, you gotta speak for me. I can't. God had not even loosened his tongue yet for him to even speak the way that he ended up speaking to Pharaoh and stuff. So he must have really had an issue. But I feel like God called all three of them as little people, as he knew where Moses was going, and he knew that the brother and sister had to help out. I feel like the mother knew too. I feel like the mother, she may not have known all the details, but I think that what we don't see a lot when we read scriptures, we don't see a lot the wisdom and the genius of the women. It shows it sometimes. It'll highlight sometimes how strong they were and how strategizing they were. Like, when I forget her name, but how they basically helped to win a whole war, by being undercover spies, and stuff like that. So, I know we don't see a lot. I was telling CA this the other day, that when I used to take time to read and stuff, which I'm going to be getting back to, I'm kind of excited about, but when I just love to read, and a whole series of books I really loved a lot, and I believe one of them was Miriam, but Anne Rice, who wrote Dracula, she got broken from her atheism thing and became a devout Christian. And at that time, then she started writing novels based on biblical characters. And so she wrote several of them. She wrote Jesus as a little boy, but like in a novel. And she wrote lots of the women of the Bible. And I think one of them was Miriam, but it would just develop them as human beings, because we get the blips and we're like, okay, well, this happened here and this happened. I love that you pointed out that she was called prophetess, which did not happen often, I'm sure. We could probably do a count, based on what version. But anyway, I as you were reading and talking about it, I was imagining, oh yeah, they knew. I mean, even though it doesn't spell it all out, I'm like, they kind of knew. They didn't know where he'd end up, but they were strategizing about, well, because even the women who had the babies in those days, the kings and queens, the queens and stuff, and the princesses who had babies, they didn't nurse them, they used nursemaid. So it was like, and I guarantee you they knew where she'd be bathing, because how slaves knew all type of stuff. They knew who did what, when, where, and they had the information change going. They knew how to spread the information. So she knew just where that princess was going to be bathing. She knew she probably had a kind heart and would want to protect this baby. And she knew she was going to need somebody to feed that baby. And so she, I believe that the mama worked it out. And even though Miriam was a little girl, she knew she could trust Miriam to take care of business, to do what, because they realized that in these days, these kids worked at that age. They were workers. They were worker bees, And so, I think the mama planned the whole thing out, and I believe God called all three of the children. But yeah, they did get the whole jealousy thing of being jealous of the little brother and stuff like that, and they forgot themselves. Like God was like, what you're supposed to be doing. You helped them get here. You knucklehead. And so Aaron immediately, I agree. Aaron immediately, asked for forgiveness, basically, and said, my bad, all this stuff. And Miriam didn't say anything. And so she got hit with the leprosy thing. And that it's similar to, Judas, and in the Bible was Jude, because Judas was it Judas that turned that basically denied God 3 times, right? And no,
Peter.
Peter denied him 3 times, but Judas, of course, gave him up for. But Peter was repentant, and Judas was not. So that's kind of what that reminded me of when you were saying that, why did Aaron kind of get forgiven, because he asked for forgiveness. It seemed like Miriam was like, I'm the oldest, so, God.
And Aaron wasn't called a prophet, but Miriam was called a prophetess. And I just wonder if she was in the trinity of Moses and Miriam and Aaron, if it was Moses and then really Miriam. And then Aaron was more of a mouthpiece. And he, that middle child, he's always trying to keep the peace. He's just trying to keep people from fussing. So yeah, I did wonder about that. If she started it, like I said, some certain readings said that she instigated the issue. And then there was no point where she said, I'm sorry,
Right.
and I should have done it. She didn't seem repentant.
Yeah.
That, that calling out in Numbers 12, at once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, like they all heard him, come out to the tent of meeting, all 3 of you. Like Daddy said, come here. It's like, uh-oh. And I can't even imagine. I can't. And then when he even references, if a father had spitten in his daughter's face, she would have been in disgrace for, like he likens himself to a father chastising his child.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, she still gets a punishment. But
I mean, I'll heal her, because you asked, but she's, she's grounded for 7 days.
Yes.
So, yes.
Not gonna give her a whooping.
Well, he gave her a little whooping.
He gave her a whooping. Yeah, but it was.
He did.
Yeah.
But I love it when God goes all the way too. Wait, did I stutter? Did I? I told him I talked to him to his face. And you got the nerve to doubt something that he did. When I'm talking to him to his face, in plain
Right.
English, not
Not in
riddles,
dreams,
visions, or
not in
dreams.
visions. Yeah, not in riddles, none of that. I am speaking to him plainly, face to face. So basically, and he said, so if you're speaking that other thing that you read, if you're speaking against him, you're speaking against me, because I'm talking to him directly.
Right. If he's doing the wrong thing, certainly he will hear from me about it. You should not be out here in these streets talking junk about my guy.
Jada.
Right? Ooh.
For real.
Let me
for
stop.
real.
Let me stop.
But also look at what Miriam was struck with. She was struck with, you're talking about somebody's skin color, if that's what it was. Everything we've ever looked through has said that it was it was the thing, because the whole caste system and all that stuff existed even at that time. Is that whether, and she could have been just like we have friends that are lighter and the sister's a little darker, and we're looking at them and we're thinking they're the same shade, but people who are from that region, the different country they're from, they clearly see that they're lighter and darker. We're like they are two of the most gorgeous people we ever saw, but people look and they say, oh yeah, well she's darker, and you're like,
I know.
but I'm sure that was happening in that time, and I thought it was interesting that it was her skin that was affected, that she was basically she was bleached. It's like, oh, you want to talk about color? How about you got no color? We gonna bleach you for 7 days, and then you can come back after 7 days. We'll heal you, but yeah.
What you're talking about is true. So I had a friend, colleague, who I used to work with, who was lighter than both Gina and Karen, like just light, very, very, she was mixed. So she was super light. And of course, I can see the difference. You all could see the difference. We're Black, so we can see the difference in shades. But there was a white woman that we worked with. It's like, oh my gosh, you two look exactly alike. And I was like, we look exactly alike. She's light skin, I'm dark skin. And she's like, and I'm brown skin. And she was like, what does that mean? And I said, my skin tone is darker than hers. She was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you can't tell we're not the same color? No, she could not see it. And we're talking somebody mixed and me, a brown girl. But it's like you're saying, you take somebody from India or from Puerto Rico or from some of the Asian countries, and we see them all as basically the same shape, with maybe if there's an extreme, we might see it, but in general, like they look alike. And they're like, no, she's darker. I'm like, wait, and then, then you have to start really staring, which is awkward, trying to figure out, are they really different? But it is interesting.
And I think also, like you said, because we're used to seeing the shades, we can see, in my family, I can see from Cherry's lightness all the way to my brother. I mean, there must be 20 shade variations among the 13 children, and that's what we've seen all our life. We've seen, people in, in my church, and when I lived in Louisiana, and I thought it was a couple that I thought was Caucasian. The whole time, until their children came home from college, I was like, oh, they adopted Black kids. I'm like, they were not adopted those kids. And so that's when I found out that these were actually people of color who were Creole, and they were the Spanish African side of Creole.
Which means you might get anything.
You can get anything, and so anyway, but yeah, all of that stuff is very, very interesting, and I love that study of Miriam. I'm going to, when I get a chance, I'm going to see if I can look downstairs and see if I have, if one of the books that I have, if one of them is on Miriam.
I think I might have one too. I'm going to look as well. Karen, before we sign off, do you have anything you want to share, sweet love? Let's see if she can unmute. You can do it, Karen. You can do it.
We have faith in you.
That turned the camera.
Touch the
It should look
microphone.
like something with a diagonal line through it.
Also, moving the mouse around helps because it makes the,
She's on a phone. It's not really a mouse.
oh, it's a mouse, a phone, okay.
But if you touch the screen, bottom left should be the microphone. That's the camera. There we
Oh, you
go.
got the, all right, now we just need the camera back on.
Or she just if she can talk.
Yes,
You did
yes.
it.
If I have these buds in my ears, and it's like, oh my gosh, but no. And I even lost my train of thought on speaking about
Wait, come
Miriam
closer
being-
to your phone, honey.
I said even my thoughts on Miriam and talking about her, and I was just looking at her kind of like maybe being a little rebellious if she's listening to God and what He's saying, and she's just like, well, I don't know, but I'm gonna have to look more into her as well. And speaking about the older siblings and how they feel about the younger ones, and I say that because me being the middle child and having an older sister and wanting to actually listen to her and or older brother actually wanting to listen to them, but then them looking to me and asking me different questions. And I'm like, why are you asking me? 'Cause I should be listening to you, but sometimes I guess what I have to offer may be something to get something good. Um, but I just look at Miriam kind of looking just a little bit rebellious and kind of like wondering why did you want me to speak up and say something, which is, and when she did or she didn't, it's like, okay, well, let me do this. This is what's gonna happen because you didn't really respond to what I had to say. You didn't really listen to me. So I don't know. It's very, very interesting, and I never looked at it that way either. It was just always Moses, and didn't really listen to why or how he was handled. So I'm gonna have to look at that a little closer as well. So yeah, and then even when you're talking about the different coloring, the skin colors, and wow, our family, ooh, it's a lot. Like some are blonde. And then we're like, where did that blonde hair come from? And it's the first time going to a family reunion in Georgia, and we're in the house, and I'm looking at all the people on my mother's side, her father, and the pictures on the wall. And they were all white, and I asked Mom, I said, Mom, who are all those white people? And she's like, honey, those are your ancestors. Those are not white people. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's what they look like to me. But it's just really very, 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 it really is. So as you dig deeper into it, it's just wow. And I sometimes I look at it and it's like the world really isn't white; it's actually black. But that could just be my thought as well. So, I don't know. But thank you, Gina. I'm gonna have to. Whew, that was something. That sibling thing right there, that was really something. Never really even looked at, and kind of didn't really even know what was happening as I was trying to catch up on the Bible studies that were happening. I didn't really know, and I came in late, so I really didn't get to hear everything, because trying to work the phone, so I could be seen or whatever. So it was good. Thank you, ladies. Spring, you look great.
Ah, thank you.
Oh my gosh, you look great.
Thank
great.
you. Yeah.
Good to see you.
I feel good.
Good.
I will post the recording. It'll show up on Facebook, so you'll see it right away there. But I'm trying to play catch up. I was getting my Zoom folders together because, with the new computer and trying to get things uploaded and downloaded. I don't know what I did with I have an external hard drive that I was supposed to be transferring stuff over. I took it to North Carolina thinking I would have some time to do it while I was there, and I have not seen it since I got back. So I know it's here somewhere. I think it's in my computer bag, but anyway, but I've been trying to get everything uploaded so I can update Bible Study Live onto YouTube, because a lot of people go there for the channel and watch the different Bible studies. So I need to be able to upload those So that's why I take such good notes, so I can still put all the scriptures and things like that in the comments of, you know, the description of the YouTube. So it's just a little bit of a project, but I'm going to get it done. So anyway, Gina, thank you so much. You did such an excellent job with tonight's Bible study. Kudos to you. And it was such a great story. I love it. Miriam, a big sister story. Is that what we're going with? Okay. Check on the grammar for my sister. So
My sister Jocelyn, actually her name is Miriam.
wait,
And
say that
her
again.
sister Jocelyn.
Her sister Jocelyn is actually
My sister
named
Jocelyn,
Miriam.
her name is Miriam. When she was in the hospital, when my mother had her, the nurse or whatever named her first, named her Miriam Lee. My mom was like, "How did that happen?" I didn't put that in, but it was actually put on her birth certificate as Miriam. And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." Don't know why this nurse did that or what was going on with that, but that's actually her name, Miriam Louise Jocelyn. It's like, wow, okay. So now I really have to
Yeah.
look into she is an older sibling, and yeah, a lot going on. Kind of knows with my sister Jocelyn. So yeah,
Yeah. Wow. And her name is actually Miriam.
thank you.
Or she was sort of named Miriam.
What is her name? Miriam? Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, Facebook, we're going to sign off now. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this message as much as we all did. And thank you again, Gina, for speaking and sharing. It was so good. So I'm going to sign off of Facebook.